Greetings, our Frederick Riddle here with another episode of Christian News and Views. And this is episode 2697, and this is Tuesday Bible Talk. Well, today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I don't know about you, but when I'm on the internet, I get all sorts of emails for one thing. And there's a lot of questions, but they're not asking me. These are questions that are just blasted out there. And some of them are really head scratchers. Now, I mean that they're hard to answer. I mean that why are you even asking that? I'm entitling this foolish questions. We're not supposed to get into foolish questions, but sometimes we need to get into it just to straighten things out. And there's been people who have answered these. I never have. I never touch them, but they keep coming up as I think, okay, maybe I need to address this. I don't really think that anybody out there really has these questions, but just in case you're a new Christian and you don't know the answer to that or don't know how to answer that, maybe we should take a look at them. So that's what I'm doing today. So some of these are sincere, but most of them fall into the line of stupidity or deception. And that's not kind, and I'm not meaning it to be kind. I think you'll understand. I'm just going to take a look at two of them today. And here's the first one. Why do people believe Jesus was a Jew when he wasn't? Now, this has been posted numerous times, but and answered by different people. And some of them are good answers, some of them are questionable, but they've been answered. But it keeps popping up. And so I thought, well, I will go into it and I will try to, even though I think it's a stupid question, well, actually, let me stop on that. I used to think it was a stupid question, but more and more, I think it is an attempt to discredit Jesus. First of all, this there's been statements out there that, well, we're not even sure Jesus existed. Duh. There's a what I would call a ton. One of my favorite phrases is a ton of evidences. We don't have the time or energy or desire to go into all that. People who say that usually are not sincere. It's usually coming from non-believers, and a non-believer, according to the Bible itself, they are incapable of discerning spiritual things. So I'm going to answer this question. Don't know that it was not necessarily going to stop people asking, because people who ask that probably don't watch the show, this podcast. But the truth is that Jesus is called a Jew because he was a Jew. The Bible provides two genealogies for Jesus in the Bible itself. One goes from uh, actually from Abraham all the way forward. Another one also goes way back in time. Both of them are ancient genealogies, and one is for Joseph, the stepfather, and the other is for Mary, the mother. Now, um, Joseph had what you would call a legal genealogy. Legal in the sense that the person that who was to be the redeemer, the person who was to be the king of Israel, uh, excuse me, had to be of his line. However, God put a curse on that line and said nobody from that line is going to uh, occupy the throne. And there's only one solution to that I can think of anyhow, and that is that Jesus, or not Jesus, but that the well, yeah, okay, Jesus had to be the stepson of a descendant in that line. Joseph, in this case, is in that line, and Jesus was his stepson, or put another way, Joseph was his stepfather. He did not have a biological connection uh, to Jesus, but he is the one who played the role of father when Jesus was a child, when Jesus was a young man. Um, One of the things that I believe that not everybody believes, and it's not a doctrinal issue, is that Joseph was not a teenager, as some people like to claim he was. Back in those days, it was not. It was usually a man did not go out and get married until he had a business and was successful at it. Jesus inherited his father's business, but they were poor. Back in those days, carpenters were poor. And so he would have been, if he had been looking for a wife, for instance, and he wasn't, but if he was, he would have gone out and tried to gain what was in the Bible called the price of a wife or bride. And he that usually puts people in the area of their early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. By the time that they have the money, home, and things of this things ready for a bride. And so I think that he was in his early 30s. It was quite normal that the wife might be young, a teenager, and some people put Mary as young as 13. I don't, but it's like I said, it's not doctrinal. For me, I just put her at 16, but she could have been younger or older. We have no way of knowing. But in any case, Jesus was the stepson of Joseph, and I believe Joseph was probably in his 30s. When you look at Jesus' own career, he didn't start his ministry until he was about 30 years old and died at the age of 33. So all that suggests that there were two genealogies, and the one going through Joseph was the legal one. And it was passed down to Jesus, who was not a biological son, but by law, he was the stepson. Coupled with the genealogy records in the Old Testament, it's easy to trace Jesus' heritage back through the history of the Hebrew people who became the Jewish nation. The two genealogies traced in the Gospels are generally accepted to trace Jesus' heritage through both his earthly parents and are targeted at two different audiences, and we won't get into that. In Matthew, we get this assertion: the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That's Matthew 1:1. That was written by the apostle Matthew. It was an eyewitness account from a man whose occupation required study and an eye for detail. To those who question who wrote the book of Matthew, you only need to look at what his contemporaries said. So you have his assertion plus the testimonies of contemporaries. The entire Jewishness of Jesus is apparent. The Bible is clear, very clear, that Jesus was a Jew, and no one had any doubts about that. So let's move on to the second question. And this is equally falls into the stupid and possibly the divisive. Why did early church leaders associate the Gospels with a specific apostle? Well, first of all, let's get one thing clear. A lot of times they say, well, this could not be Matthew, or this was not written until late first century. I think most authorities would put that as probably between 50 and maybe 90 AD. But people are saying, well, how long that was from the time that Jesus was crucified? Really wasn't that long, folks. You go to 90 AD, that's only 60 years. And so, but that's when these letters became well known. They were written, actually, the writing of them, they focus on are probably closer to the middle than the older, except for maybe Revelation. But the Gospels themselves were written rather, I think, in probably within what 30 to 40 years or something like that. Doesn't really matter because what happens is that these letters were written to individuals or to individual churches. They were not written to the broad thing. God meant them to be, but when they were written, they were sent to different people or different churches. So neither the apostle or the church had copy machines in those days where they could just run off 100 copies for distribution. So here's one for you, here's one for you, and so forth. It took time to reach that larger audience. And so the time factor between the writing, the appearing in where people across the known world at the time became familiar with them. Yes, it was a long time because it traveled by horse and buggy, mule, camel, things of this nature, or ship, sail ship at that. So it took time. I got made out a thing here and I'm going to try to share it with you. And help maybe clarify what I'm trying to say here. Here we go right here. Okay, so hopefully that's you can see that. So right here you have the gospel writer and authority. So here are the gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And if you look at it, I'm saying that the writer is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. However, we get to the authority, that's where you get differences. Matthew was an apostle. He traveled with Jesus prior to the crucifixion. He was an apostle. But Mark, who wrote the book of Mark, worked alongside of Apostle Peter. He started out with Paul. Paul sent him away because he failed. There was a failure there. And he ended up working with Peter. And so a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people believe that Mark is authorized by the apostle Peter. Then you have Luke, and he is worked and traveled with Paul. So this is authorized by the apostle Paul. Then you have John the apostle. So why is that important? Because people needed to have an authority. There's probably back in those days, I would not be one bit surprised if there were other people writing so-called gospels, their own recollections, and they were not approved of God. God chose to put his word out there through his apostles. And the only one you might wonder about it might be Paul, but Paul was an apostle, and he did spend time with Jesus. We believe that he spent 3.5 years, 3 to 3.5 years with Jesus in the Saudi Arabia area. And so they all knew Jesus personally. Matthew, Mark, and John knew Jesus before the crucifixion. Paul got to know him after the crucifixion and resurrection. And so that is, I think that's important a thing to take into consideration. And so, let me see, I don't know if I have anything, I don't think I had anything more to add to that. So what I wanted to do now is wrap it all up. We'll probably revisit this, maybe ask some more questions for Thursday. But one of the answers, a person comes to you with something that was way out of line with what you know. It's always a good idea to have the Word of God at hand. Now, when I was a young Christian and I was at work, my boss came up to me and he said, "Did you know that they found a book of Judas?" Well, I was a young Christian. I don't even think I was carrying a pocket Bible with me at the time. I was at my job working. I'd not heard this or anything like this. I did not know how to properly answer. But God, I think, led me to what worked is that I said, I'll have to look it up or something along that line. But another one you could say is, well, when did he have time to write that? From the time that Jesus was um, went to trial to the crucifixion, very short time. And during that time, during the crucifixion, Judas went out and hung himself. So he didn't really have a whole lot of time. And he didn't have AI available to write the story for him. The best they could have done would be a diary of what he had gone through during his walks with Jesus. But he was an unbeliever from the get-go. And so you can't believe a word he says. So even if it's original, even if it's a fake or original, either way, you just can't believe it. But hopefully, seeing it there, the authority, you have to have the authority of an apostle behind one of the gospels. And you look at all the letters in the New Testament; they're written by men of God who were apostles, not just disciples. I would have loved to have heard what Bartholomew, I think, no, not Bartholomew. Can't even think of his name right now. One of the disciples that I have read out several times. I would have loved to see a letter written by him of his side of things. But God put out the ones that He wanted us to hear. In Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the Gospels. The letters are, most of them are from Paul, and a few are from, you have James, and the brother of Christ, and then you have Jude, who was, I think he was also a brother of Christ. And so you had different people giving their perspective, all of them under the power, the influence, and direction of the Holy Spirit. So back to the Gospels, they had to have the authority. And that is why the church went with them. They didn't really have a choice. So the church made the decisions as far as mankind was concerned. But God is the one who told them what those decisions had to be. He's not going to let you dilute His word. Remember, there's the written word, and then there's the living word, who is Jesus Christ Himself. He's not going to let you mess that up. Excuse me. Well, that's it for today. I hope that's been helpful to you, informative, even inspirational. And at the same time, perhaps you have some thoughts on these questions or some questions that you have heard that you would like me to comment on. So give me just in the comments, let me know, and I will be watching for it. I do want to encourage you to continue watching these podcasts. I put them out for you, that you can have something to chew on, something to think about. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I give you what I believe, and I give it to you as authoritatively as I can, but you're entitled to disagree. And then I also want you to know that this is brought to you by and sponsored to you by TNR Independent Books, a Christian indie publisher. If you're a Christian, you want to know how to write, we'll teach you. If you're a Christian and you already know how to write, maybe you've already written something and you need a publisher, we would love the opportunity to see if we and you might be a fit for one another. Go to trbookservices.com, our bookstore in the writing department, and there you'll find the services where you make an application, and then when I will either approve or disapprove it. If I approve, you will get the tools, you'll get the opportunity, and you will get a coupon, a significant coupon to help you to even afford whatever service you want. Well, you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.